Welcome, everybody. I'm Marc David, founder of the Institute for the Psychology of Eating. We are back in the Psychology of Eating podcast. I'm with Cecili today. Welcome, Cecili.
Thank you so much.
Glad we're doing this. Glad we're here. So for listeners, if you're new to the podcast, I'm in session and Cecili and I are meeting for the first time. And the idea is to have a session together and see if we can help move you forward, Cecili. So if you could wave your magic wand and get whatever you wanted with food and body, what would that be for you?
Really, it would be freedom. Just freedom from anxiety to have around food choices and how it affects my health specifically.
So freedom from the anxiety or freedom from the symptoms that you would need to protect yourself from?
Well, I mean, I kind of, for me, it's interesting because it's straightforward, but yet it's very complicated. So I have a digestive disease and, was told, okay, you have to take this medication for the rest of your life. And instead I chose to try food first. And when it worked, I think what that did was it sent my brain a message saying these specific foods are what you kind of need to stay near and dear to in order to maintain a healthy body and, be free from symptoms. And so this has been over a decade ago. And so I know what foods my body rejects just from being in tune with my body. But at the same time, there's a whole bunch of foods that are healthy that I have some fear around trying just because, I think it just goes back to that feeling a sense of security. I mean, I just call it, I call it food fear.
Sure.
I have some food fear.
Yes.
And even though I know that I'm also a nutritionist, I should just throw that in the mix for you. I think it complicates things a little bit more. So I know from a professional, educational perspective that diversity and plant fibers is really, really what I should be shooting for. And yet I feel like there's a block. I have a block. And I mean, it is some fear and anxiety that comes up when I think about trying new foods and how that might affect my health status.
Sure. What is the condition you were diagnosed with?
So I have ulcerative colitis, which is one, it's inflammatory bowel disease. And I ended up in the hospital. So it was a pretty serious situation. And so, like I said, whenever I figured out these foods that felt really good in my body and, didn't cause any symptoms, I felt like I needed to kind of stay within those parameters. And I also have a lot of food reactivities, which is common with people that have inflammatory bowel disease.
So these days, if you can give me the quick summary, what does your diet look like in terms of the sum total of the foods that work for you?
Yeah, I probably eat about 25, 30 different types of foods. So it's not ultra limited, but I want to explore other fruits and vegetables. Specifically, I'm really good with proteins, but it's this area of fruits and vegetables that I want to leap out into. And every year, for kind of my resolution or my goal, I always say, this is going to be the year that I'm going to just really hit it out of the park. And I'm going to just, by the end of the year, I'm going to have a huge amount of diversity in my diet as far as fruits and vegetables are concerned. And I always come up short.
You come up short because you don't try things because of the food fear?
Yes, exactly.
Now, has there been a moment in time in the last bunch of years where you tried something and it didn't work for you?
Yes. Yeah,
What
absolutely.
happens? What is the severity of the symptom or reaction?
Well, some of them are things outside of just kind of healthy eating that they immediately cause serious symptoms associated with inflammatory bowel disease, like, passing blood and things like that. But from, just like from a vegetable perspective, it can be anything from upset stomach to maybe diarrhea, maybe headaches. So nothing super severe. But what it does is it tells me kind of psychologically, it says like, oh, well, that didn't work. So put the brakes on.
Yes, understood. So your challenge makes total sense to me. Here you are, your body's kind of placing certain guidelines, we can call them limitations. Your body's talking to you.
Yeah.
And it's clearly giving you messages. This works, this doesn't. And sometimes when things don't work, it's not a very nice reaction. And even if it's not a bad reaction, it still doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Yes. So it makes perfect sense that one would be in fear of going outside of what works. So I want to address that, but I first want to kind of talk a little bit more about you and what surrounds your food and body journey, just so I feel I'm more locked and loaded to be of use to you. Before you were diagnosed, did you have symptoms? Did you suspect anything? Like, what was happening for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, a couple of years before I was diagnosed, I did have symptoms, and I went kind of from doctor to doctor trying to figure out what was going on, and always just kind of brushed off like, oh, these, no big deal, take this thing or that thing over the counter, until things escalated to a point where I just broke down, in tears in my doctor's office at yet another doctor's office. And they finally took things seriously and sent me on to a specialist. But so that was 2.5 years that I had these symptoms that nobody could really help me figure out what was going on. But prior to that, if I look back, of course, I wasn't aware, wasn't really consciously living at, most of my life. And so if I look back, I mean, when I came into the world, I had problems with food. And so my whole life, I think I probably had reactions to food, and my body was, like you said, speaking to me, but I wasn't taught the language of the body. So I wasn't really understanding what the things that I felt meant. And then also, just kind of as another background note that might, spice things up too, is that I feel like I grew up in an era of, the diet, I'm from the diet generation. So I have a history of food relationship issues to begin with. So then I think that my food relationship issues looked differently previously, but now that I have this disease and that I'm trying to, listen to my body, it's taken shape in a different way, my food relationship issues.
Mm-hmm. Are you wishing to lose weight?
No, I don't need to lose weight. In fact, many times I need to gain weight.
Yes. So have you been self-treating all along the way once you realized you weren't going to go on medication? Or have you worked with any other kind of outside doctors, naturopaths, functional medicine doctors?
Yeah, I have. I've worked with GI specialists, a naturopathic doctor. I had, acupuncture. I had a functional medicine doctor. So just kind of in and out periodically. Not the entire, 10 years have I been under somebody's treatment. Mm-hmm. But so definitely maintaining remission from ulcerative colitis has been mostly without medication and just from food.
Yes.
And in fact, another piece of the story is that I declined the medication. They told me food didn't matter. And I knew that probably wasn't right. So I went on this journey to try to figure out what my disease was, what food meant for me and my body and my symptoms. And it took me about 9 months to figure out how to eat for my body. And then all of a sudden, all my symptoms went away. So at this point, we're talking about like 3 years of having symptoms, and then food miraculously changes everything.
Yes. What a successful journey for you so far.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, I've had some ups and downs for sure.
Yes. But all things considered, the drugs that are used for ulcerative colitis, they don't give you a cure.
Yes, that's right.
So you took matters into your own hands and you went outside the mainstream where you could to look for other solutions. And so far, you're managing your experience. And it sounds like your body's in better shape now than it was a bunch of years ago.
Oh, yes. I feel better than, ever. Which is, also ties me to that dialogue in my mind about food and not venturing out too far.
Yes, yes. So here's a frame that I'll often use for any kind of food and body challenge, which is our food and body challenges are great teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Above and beyond anything else, they're great teachers. And you can be learning a lot from a great teacher on many different levels. So clearly on one level, how has this challenge been a great teacher for you? It's in part, it sounds like it's taught you to take certain matters into your own hands. It's taught you that you can be empowered to
Yes.
self-treat and actually see your results. It's taught you to be in relationship with your body in a whole different way. And it's taught you that you could achieve a certain amount of success relative to your health by really paying attention to food and your body and your symptoms. So, and there's probably more in there for you that's, I'm going to say, obvious in terms of how this has been a great teacher. And really in this conversation, what I'm hearing is there's a certain amount of understandable concern, hesitation, fear. I'm kind of using those interchangeably, and natural caution,
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh my goodness, this is some crazy unwarranted fear that shouldn't be there.
Right.
It's a completely understandable concern. And it's a completely understandable hesitation. So you can call it a fear, and maybe fear creeps in, but I'm more framing it as, let's proceed wisely here, which I think
Mm-hmm.
is what you're doing. And now that we're kind of looking at your eating challenge as a great teacher, well, let me ask you the question relative to branching out, trying other foods, because you're in this new place now. You're in this place where your symptoms are largely managed and you know what works for you. And there's this part of you that says, the nutritionist, your inner nutritionist says, wow, you should have some more diversity. You should eat other things. Yeah, sure,
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense to me. I like that. And then you come against this wall called, but wait a second, and the list of concerns.
Mm-hmm.
Does that, and I'm just kind of asking the question, does that kind of challenge show up in any other places in life for you?
Yes. Yeah, sure. Of course. Yeah. Now that I think about it.
Yeah. So anything you can share that's shareable here, like places in life where you want to branch out, your intuition is guiding you in a certain direction, but the concerns and the hesitations and the fears are going, whoa, wait a second.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, probably every aspect of my life. I mean, so I'm a small business owner. I own my own nutrition business. And yeah, I mean, one of my biggest struggles is like moving forward with putting myself out there in order to, prosper with this business. I struggle with that a lot. And I'm an overthinker. Well, what if this and what if that? And it's all these endless possibilities that come up in my mind that really just then I shut down. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
you know what? Status quo is good. I'm fine.
Mhm.
So, and it relates to the food thing too, where it's like, you know what? I'm doing pretty good. It's okay. But from what I know, the information that I've gained throughout, the last decade of learning, I need to expand, I need to stop that overthinking and all of that extra dialogue that happens. So yeah,
Yes.
it affects my business in the same kind of way that I
Yeah.
haven't made that connection.
Yeah. I think it's a great connection because at the very least, there's a connection between how the mind works and how digestion works.
Yeah.
You know, from a scientific perspective, digestion largely begins in the mind.
Yep.
You know, as soon as you look at a food, if it's a favorite food, your mouth starts to water. You know, that's salivary amylase beginning in your mouth. If you think about a favorite food, your stomach can start to churn. That's peristalsis, kind of getting ready. So just looking at a food, your mind starts to know, your mind starts to make connections with the body. And what's also fascinating is that how the mind works and how digestion works are very similar. We often use digestive metaphors in our languaging. You know, let me chew on that. Let me ruminate about that. Or, you know, I can't stomach that person. Or I had a gut feeling about that guy. We don't say I had an elbow feeling or a kidney
Yeah.
feeling about somebody. So the way the mind works is often how digestion works. In different systems of healing, if my mind is in upset, it's said that it's easy for digestion to be in upset. I mean, think about it in science, in straight up science. If you and I are in a stress response, you're not going to be digesting your meal to its fullest. In fact, if you're in a full-blown stress response, the lion is chasing you. In a full-blown stress response, digestion is completely shut down. So the stress response is a graded response. There's no stress, mild stress, medium, hot stress. And depending on the intensity of the stress, that will determine the intensity of digestive shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
So in even moderate stress, we'll be excreting nutrition. We'll be excreting nutrients. Our assimilate, it's like literally right out the body. So the mind is impacting digestion. Now, I think it gets more and more interesting because on the one hand, what we know is your digestion is challenged as an organ system and is giving clear feedback, this works, this doesn't. And your digestion is letting you know very quickly. It's being intelligent.
Right.
So any symptom that you get is an intelligent symptom by the body. It's saying, hey, Cecily, this doesn't work. So you're getting clear feedback. So it makes sense to me that if that's what's going on in your digestion is telling you, you got to be on alert.
Right.
There's some, you know, mild dangers out there in terms of food.
Yep.
So it's easy for the mind to start to work that way. Just in general, like, oh my God, got to be alert, got to be aware.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's easy if my mind generally comes from that place. Like if I have no digestive issues and I have the kind of mind that's constantly on red alert. I don't trust people, maybe, or I don't trust life, or I don't trust the world. I can see that eventually impacting my weakest link.
Right.
Which for some people might be their joints, for some people it might be their heart, for some people it might be their brain, for some it's digestion. So I don't know which comes first. I don't know if either comes first.
Right.
Maybe they arise at the same time. I don't know if we could ever know. But all I'm trying to say is that there's a connection there. And I'm going to imagine that as you use your mind in a way that truly benefits you, at the very least, it'll be neutral towards your digestive system. And at best, it'll help your digestion because you're introducing a new way of mentation into the body. So in other words, to me, as you become more explorative in your life, it's going to be a little bit easier for digestion to relax. Because part of it is, if I'm guarding against, there's a certain amount of wise stress response in there. I'm alert. I'm
Yeah.
like, don't interfere with my castle. I got to protect. And on the one hand, that's a good thing. So it's a little bit of a paradox. On the one hand, that's a very smart thing. Yeah, you want to protect. You want to have boundaries. I'm not going to eat this, this, and this. That's a boundary.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, sometimes you got to take a risk and
Right.
let something into the castle that may be good and might not be good. And I think the solution there is to, I think, learn how to trust. It's not even trusting your body. It's trusting you. Trusting that if I eat something and it doesn't work for my body, you know something, I know how to take care of myself.
Right.
I'm not gonna die. I'm not gonna just poof and be gone. Like, yeah, it might be irritating. It might be annoying, but I know how to take care of myself. And I'm always going to assume that the more we can relax into experimenting and exploring anything, the better chance we have for success.
Yeah.
So if you're relaxing into a food choice, you're putting your body in a physiologic relaxation response, which is the optimum state of digestion and assimilation and elimination. The body digests most efficiently in the relaxation state.
Yeah.
So you see where I'm going with this.
I do. And as you're speaking, it's, it's all these little epiphanies going off that, I mean, I can see myself as clear as day on the days that I mean, almonds, for example, sometimes they work for me and sometimes they don't. And there's certain times when I just really want to have something that's almond based, like a cupcake or a cake or, something like that, that's almond based. And when I just allow myself and enjoy it and not overthink it, I honestly do not have any symptoms. When I've gone to the freezer and I've been, thinking about pulling something out that's, could be the exact same cake, and I'm feeling guilty or I'm feeling nervous, or I've planted these seeds in my mind that that's something I shouldn't be doing because you can have too much of this thing, or, there's so much psychology that goes into just going to the freezer right before I decided to even walk over there. And that's already impeding my digestion. So I'm already, yes. Yeah. And I know that about digestion. I just haven't recognized that in myself until as soon as you were talking it through, I'm like, I can literally see myself many times having done just what you said.
Yeah. So bingo. So you know that experience. You've proven it to yourself.
Yeah.
And so if we get back to our relationship with food and body is a great teacher, and our challenges with food and health are a great teacher, then there's a teaching here.
Right.
And the teaching is, how can you, in part, the teaching is, how can you relax more and more into your experience? With the understanding that, yeah, you might try a food and it might not work. But the relaxation part comes in because you know how to take care of yourself.
Right.
And you're not going to die, and you'll get over it. And you've been through the worst of things.
Yeah.
So where you're at right now is a good place. And as you can bring down your stress temperature, you're creating the optimum conditions in your body to give it the best chance to be able to successfully digest and pulverize a food.
Yeah, that's true.
And then again, I'm going to think any other place in life where you can start relaxing into whatever you would normally back off from. And, take a risk.
Right.
And you don't have to feel stress-free.
Right.
do your best to relax into something. And part of it is just learning how to trust, even though I'm nervous and anxious.
Hmm.
Like when it comes to business, I know that place because I've taken dozens of risks in business and financially. And yeah, for the most part, they've worked out. And there's been times when, oh, wow, that's a challenge, or that's a pinch, or that hurts. And you recover
Yeah.
and you learn.
Yeah. I know that, the comment or the quote, you take every, what is it? You miss every shot you don't try to take, or it's some
Right.
basketball term, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I always say, learning experiences, whether they have an outcome that was unexpected in a negative way or a positive way, you still gain information from that, and you can keep, that can help you moving forward. So yeah, and you're right. I'm actually healthy. I'm not in a state where I have a rational reason to not just take some risks with food and
Mhm.
working on this diversity thing. So you're right.
Yeah. So we've established that, the food worry is understandable.
Hmm.
I think if you can really reframe it, and it's like, I have food caution, and for good reason.
Yeah.
I have food caution and for good reason. And I'm safe to experiment because no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
I'll recover and I'll adjust.
Yes. Yeah.
It's allowing yourself to be an explorer and not being sure what's around the corner.
Right. Which is exactly what I need to do.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question that is related to this topic, but it might not sound that it is. What are the things in your life that you do where you feel it just puts you in your body and takes you out of your head, takes you out of your mind? You're in your body.
Um, Gosh, that's a big question.
It is, yeah.
I mean, I think being in nature is huge for me. I
Mhm.
love to go on walks in the woods and, explore and find things. I'm never worried or overly cautious or overthinking anything when I'm kind of in that state of mind. I mean, I think when I'm in the kitchen, honestly, even though it sounds like that wouldn't be a safe place for me, but when
Mhm.
I'm baking, I'm just living it up. I'm having fun. It's where I love to be. And it's I feel pulled there. I feel drawn to cook and bake. And so I actually do love being there. It's not until it's like more beforehand where I'm trying to figure out what do I want to make.
Mhm.
That there's a lot of turmoil. But then once I make a decision, I get in there and I'm super happy. So I'm not overthinking, I'm exploring, I'm being creative.
Mhm.
I'd say those two things really, yeah, really are big for me.
That's
And then
great.
also with my kids.
Yeah. I asked that question because what can happen when we have a digestive challenge that keeps us on yellow alert?
Hmm.
That's an interesting way. What's coming into my system? What's coming into my body? You have to, you just have to be on the lookout for what you're doing, and you have to monitor. And it has a way of keeping us in our mind.
Yeah.
And the antidote for that is to have the experiences in life that drop you into your body
Hmm.
more and more, so you can just feel what it feels like to be in your body.
Yeah.
Because the more we're in our body, the more energy is going into our body. And I find that for a lot of people who are having digestive challenges, any kinds of movement or exercises or life experiences that just drop them in
Yeah.
tends to be very balancing and can be very healing.
Okay. Yeah. And I think it's a reprieve too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where you're not constantly overthinking and feel, just that, yeah, being in the head, that's kind of hard to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you're going to need the part of you that thinks, and you're going to need a sharp mind and a sharp brain. And you have that. And it's a skill of yours. And let's just make sure you balance that out with having times when you can let that go,
Yeah.
that have nothing to do with food. And you
Yes.
can just drop into being in your body and enjoy the body that you have.
Right. Yes. Yes. That's the connection there with going out into the, on these nature walks and stuff is
Yeah.
I'm usually do at least at some point say on a, hour long walk. I'm so grateful that I'm well enough to be able to do this. So sometimes, I will have that thought, but it doesn't overtake me and take me back to places that were, oh, remember when, you could barely walk or whatever. So yeah, I'll have to take more walks.
Yeah. Really, it's training the body more and more. All healing and repair of body tissue happens in a relaxation response. That's when the body heals.
Yeah.
Body doesn't heal when you're running from a lion. The body doesn't really heal in a stress response. So relaxation response, ideally, that's going to be happening when you're sleeping. So the
Yeah.
body's going to be doing a lot of its healing, regeneration of tissue while you're sleeping or while you're in a relaxation state. That's why, traditionally we're ill, you go to a retreat, you go to a sanatorium, you let go of work, you lie down in bed, because we understand instinctively that the body wants a relaxation response in order to heal.
Yeah.
Now, what happens is, you have a life to live. And if you're a parent, you got to deal with kids, you have to deal with work, you have a lot to deal with. And it doesn't necessarily give you a lot of time to be in that relaxation response, especially during your waking hours. So anything that you can do that signals to you, signals to your brain, signals to your mind, and signals to your body, it's safe. You can relax. We're out in nature. You love nature. It's beautiful here. Air is clean. You feel good. You're giving your body messages that it can heal.
Yeah.
And it can recharge because it's safe.
Yeah.
It's easy to be in a conversation. Should I eat this? Should I not eat that? Should I try this? Should I not try that? And really what that conversation is, will I be safe or not?
Yeah. That is what my brain wants to know.
Yes. Will I be safe? So that's why I'm suggesting to take it out, to reframe the conversation. So it's not live or die, safe or unsafe, but it's, is this a reasonable experiment? And if this experiment doesn't work, am I going to be present to love and care for myself and nurture myself through the experience? So the answer is yes, you're going to be present to love and nurture yourself. So are you going to be safe? Actually, yeah. Might you get an unwanted symptom? Yeah. But an unwanted symptom is not life-threatening.
Right. Yeah.
At this stage for you, eating a food, eating a vegetable, eating a fruit that doesn't work for you, that is not life-threatening.
Yeah.
It's an irritation, potentially.
Right. And probably unlikely, but
Yes.
yeah.
So all I'm doing is I'm just over here saying, whoa, this isn't that much of a risk.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me, I used to have panic attacks, and my acupuncturist said, I literally thought I was going to die from having panic attacks. Like they were going to cause such stress that I was going to have a heart attack. And she said, how many panic attacks have you had? I said, I don't know. I mean, hundreds. And she said, have you ever died from one?
Mhm.
I said, no, I haven't. So literally the next time I had a panic attack, I was like, you've never died from this. And I started just saying it to myself every time I would have one. And it finally resonated, like approved to my brain that it was okay. And then I stopped having panic attacks.
Fascinating, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah. Very
What a-
powerful, the mind.
Yes. Yes. So you're actually logically intervening. You're doing a self-intervention and saying, oh, this isn't life-threatening, because part of what makes the panic attack so panicky is we think we're going to die.
Yeah.
Because panic is the kind of response that one has when one's life is threatened.
Yeah.
So it's actually in certain instances, it can be a wise response. Panic, get the heck out of here,
Yeah.
because this is a bad situation. I could die. So it's always good to understand what's the brilliant reason for that symptom.
Right.
So the brilliant reason is, yeah, panic can make sense in certain situations. And, oh, this is not life-threatening.
Right. Yeah. I love the, the idea that you just planted. The seed you planted is, to me, is to just, relax. I think for some reason I've been on high alert, right?
Mhm.
And maybe at one point I needed to be on, somewhat of a high alert, but I'm definitely not in that space. And I haven't been in that space for a really long time. And yet that still has been my approach. So just kind of calm down, take a deep breath, relax, and really rationalize what I'm not putting a Hostess cupcake in my mouth. And for
Right.
some people, that shouldn't be a big deal either. For me, it would be, because of the reaction, I'm just having this disease. But yeah, to put vegetables and fruits, yeah, I just put that into perspective thanks to you.
Good. I'm so glad. Sometimes it's a perceptual shift
Yeah.
that we need that really changes things. And for you, so much of that is realizing that you are in a good place.
Yes.
Your
And that
body's,
trust part that you talked about.
yeah, your body's in a good place relative to where it's been. So
Yeah.
if you look at your journey, like, wow, you're in a far better place.
Yeah.
Where you have a disease condition that can be pretty intense, that's under control using natural means. And goodness knows what you've avoided, what unwanted symptoms and complications you've avoided by not taking a prescription drug for ulcerative colitis.
Yeah.
So you're in a good place. And part of it is just sort of taking a deep breath and realizing, okay, I'm on this new plateau, and this is where my body lives. Doesn't matter where other people's bodies live. This is about your body and where your body lives. And you know what works for you.
Yeah.
And you know what doesn't work for you. And there's also this place where there's some other possibilities that, these foods might be good for me. Maybe not, maybe yes.
Yeah.
Not going to kill me.
Right.
And they just might be good. And worst case scenario, they'll be a little irritating, but I can handle that.
Yeah, and it almost seems like the reward for the risk is greater than I was, I was looking at the risk as being greater than the reward. And the reward is, I can just, I think about, gosh, if I had, 10 or 15 new types of foods to have in my meals each week, how exciting would that be?
Mhm.
And I haven't really been thinking enough about that. I've been thinking about, but what if?
Yes,
Yeah. So yeah, reframing is big.
it is. You've done it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's just about reminding yourself of that. Just one other thing occurred to me that I want to mention before we finish up, and that is that I'm going to guess, and this is just an educated guess, that if you stayed with the same 25-ish foods that you eat for the rest of your life, you'd be okay.
Right. Yeah.
And so I just want to say that I don't know. We don't know for sure that your increased health and increased survival is dependent on you having more variety.
Right. Yeah.
More variety, I wish to say, is a preference.
Yeah.
It might make sense from a nutritional standpoint, but I'm not so sure.
Right.
Variety is something that is more recent in nutritional history.
Yeah.
You know, my grandparents didn't have a lot of variety in their diet, and they lived long lives.
Right.
And they outlived my parents.
Yeah.
You know, so, and they ate, you know, a dozen different foods.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's interesting because I do think that because as a nutritionist and specifically for inflammatory bowel disease, having those two things linking up together, I know so much that I know that diversity is really important. And so I think what I've been saying is, oh my gosh, you only eat 25 to 30 different types of foods. You're really doing harm here. You need to expand. And I've been thinking of it from that perspective. Like you have to, it's like this, I'm forcing myself to do it as opposed to just, I would like to diversify, just from a flavor profile perspective, but
Sure.
truly my desire comes from this place of negativity, which is, oh my gosh, you have to do this because otherwise you're not going to be as healthy as you could be.
Right. And all I'm saying is we don't know that that's true.
Right. And I had not ever considered that. I had just, said that's not, it never came into my mind. The opposite came in my mind. I'm dependent on diversifying my diet.
Yes. So if we look at diversification as a preference,
Yeah,
I would like to have more choices.
right.
And from a nutritional standpoint, that could be very beneficial to me.
Yeah.
Hard to know for sure. I sense it would be, but again, I'm gonna say your life and your ideal health doesn't necessarily depend on that.
Right.
So if we decouple that, then you can just be a nutritional explorer, and this isn't a life or death thing.
Yeah. And I actually eat really healthy. And so if I just thought about that for a minute, yeah. So yeah, very, very, very helpful session. So I am very appreciative.
I'm glad, Cecili. Great work. And I think it's so great that you're using your own food and body challenges to help other people.
Thank you.
You've been on your own journey. You're on your own journey. You've gotten your own education, and what a good thing. And you're just continuing to learn and grow from your own food and body experience. Like that's sometimes that's the best we can do, and that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you so much. I do too. It's wonderful speaking with you.
Thanks, Cecili. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Take care, my friends.
Hey friends, we're so happy that you've joined us for another episode of The Psychology of Eating with Marc David. Are you loving these episodes? Then simply subscribe and you'll never miss an episode again. We'd also love it if you'd leave us a comment below so we can hear more about your own journey with food and body. And if you're curious about what we offer at the Institute for the Psychology of Eating, including our internationally acclaimed coach certification training that's rooted in dynamic eating psychology and mind-body nutrition, please head on over to our website, psychologyofeating.com. Until next time, take care, and remember, having the body you want starts with loving the body you have.